Basically, my whole thesis is that copper miner stocks will soar more, way more, and for a longer period of time than memory stocks. That is my whole thesis. And basically, in the article, I talk about how like memory stocks like came to become where they are today, which is, they have all this absurd pricing growth, there's absurd demand. And basically, I start off by talking about how back in December 2024, OpenAI unveiled Sora, which is its first video generation model. And since then, the demand for AI video generation just soared. And that alone is what ignited the whole memory boom of 2025 to begin with. And then later that year, when you have the release of OpenClaw and its wide popularity, that's where we landed into the opening of the agentic AI era. And that's where like memory demand just swelled even more. Now, that's from the demand side. But at the same time, you have to look at the supply side too, because typically with all of these commodity cycles, you're going to see producers just rush in, provide more supply and just, take advantage of all these high prices and quell them at the same time. But what's interesting is like housing and like mining and like even the shipping industry right now, it's like whenever you see prices rise, instead of the producers rushing in to like build more supply and like take advantage of these high prices, they've shown restraint because these down cycles that they've been through, it just happened to be a coincidence that these down cycles have been so brutal that that's why they'd rather show restraint. They'd rather, hey, let this shortage last longer and, let's just make more money, but through a longer period of time. So with, copper prices peaked in 2011, which has happened to be around the same time that like shipping peaked, from the China boom. And since then, from 2011 to 2020, copper prices, they've just kept going down and down. They're very stagnant. Even though Tesla was rising up, creating demand for copper, even though solar prices were getting cheaper, the demand, though, wasn't enough to boost copper prices. And so, you had many producers go bankrupt. You had Wall Street demanding that all these other copper producers they gotta clean up their balance sheets, at least so they could get more financing and so, they can just keep the lights on for the next day. But after 2020, I mean, we saw prices soar because of the whole green revolution, because, you have the supply chain issues going on. Countries are realizing like, hey, we gotta build our own, solar, wind, etc. Because we can't just rely on the Middle East when everything is shut down. And at the same time, you also had the reindustrialization trend that's happening since people realize they can't rely on China to produce all of their goods. Because if they shut down, then we're all screwed. But that was temporary. But despite that, the miners they still showed restraint. They didn't invest more to like explore for new mines. Instead, they're just like, hey, we keep our existing mines, we keep producing like normal. We're not going to expand production and we'll just see what happens as time goes on. And eventually, with the AI build out, with reindustrialization, and even with this like upcoming economic boom, which surprisingly got ignited by, the whole Iran war, by the tariffs, etc. Um, there's not only a bigger demand for reindustrialization, but also for green energy, which is a big fuel for copper. I mean, back in like the pandemic times, a lot of the green energy boom was promoted by governments with subsidies, and that's not sustainable. But now, the Iran war, you know, governments don't need to give subsidies to tell people like, "Hey, you should put solar on your home. You should get an electric vehicle." No, if anything, it's like the Iran war made the whole world realize like, hey, it is cheaper to like rely on an EV to go from point A to point B. It's cheaper to like install solar in your home than continue to rely on your utility company that is facing gas shortages. So because of that, we're seeing high demand for, green energy, for reindustrialization, like everything. And from looking at the charts with copper, with FCX, with the ETF COPEX, and the other ETF COPJ, which is like a junior miners copper ETF. Like copper is already on its way to its next leg up. And based on the fundamentals of the whole copper industry, where it takes like 2 to 8 years just to discover a mine alone, and it takes 4 to 12 years to develop that mine after discovering it. Like this copper boom that we're gonna see, it's gonna last very long. Because even now, even with these high prices, like they still haven't even spent money on exploration of mines. And then from there, just imagine how much more time it takes to even develop the mine, especially when you have countries globally, having all these high standards for environmental regulations. So, so yeah, that's the whole thesis. It's just going to take longer for copper miners to even like boost production of copper. And yeah, that is the whole thesis.
So is this like a long term thing with you with the copper play, or is it like more of a short term? And are you getting this exposure mainly through the ETFs?
So to answer the first question, it's more of a long-term play, probably like 10 years, 10 plus years, especially since, it takes a very long time to even develop a copper mine to begin with. So I'm holding it for the long term. And I have exposure through FCX, which is a copper miner, along with the ETF, or sorry, closed end fund, BCX, which is the BlackRock closed end fund. I might buy some COPX, that ETF, and KCOP, which is the copper options ETF.
Nice. All right. I got you. I got you. I'll let John go ahead, and I see he got his hands up. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, that was a great article. I enjoyed reading it. One thing I just wanted to add on to it, you touched on it, of course, but it is such a long term thing for these copper mines to get going. Once they get approved, like you said, it can take up to a decade. And the demand that we're going to have going forward with all the electronics, all the solar panels, all the data centers. I mean, copper. I'm so bullish on copper. So bullish on copper, just like dissecting is. That's why I have KCOP, and I've had it for a while, and I'm going to keep stacking that because it pays a nice dividend too. But yeah, that's a good article, and a lot of people don't realize that how much of a use case scenario we're going to have for copper. You know what I mean? So good article. Just wanted to add on to dissecting.